Kwego Jinaga Mianishnaben, Jinsu Tagozian, and the Opion Denaman, Wagabitas in the man. Kwego Nakumaga Miana Kuniget, Kuniziak. We give money to Milanga Megagis among Jiminashki, the man who was ranging again, a Minosian. She went to pay what the man and I give me goes young, and again is chicken. She go in the Binam Gamina, even a more. Come on to not see me going in the academic movie. She went like a Monogamachi amor. Mr. Tago is young, and in that Pizmini is young in Nakata. She will know Maga me a young Nakadaming in because she play Pishai. Good morning, everyone. My name is Harry Wahbung. I'm from Kishkoin First Nation. Dave and I go a long ways, more than 50 years. I've been a friend of Dave for that long period of time. But let me just share quickly, in the 50s and 60s, as Dave has mentioned, then we were no longer prohibited. It was allowed for us to do our ceremonies openly. So I grew up with ceremonies in the languages of our people, from my own community, my grandparents. I came to Winnipeg in the late 60s to attend university and got a job with the government. You probably recall in 1969, when the government of the day thought it was important for all of us to become like them. Under the leadership of the Trudeau, the father of this current Prime Minister, the great legal mind that he had said to us, for collective rights, individual rights will become first. To be just, you should become like us. So he proposed a white paper to dissolve us, make sure that we fade away, that no longer reserves, no more special rights, no more treaty rights, no more status that we had before, no more ceremonies, no more languages. But our leaders at the time recognized how important that was, so they stood up and said, one in particular that I was inspired by is Dave's father, the great Dave Prashane. I had come to a meeting in a Savoy High School to listen to the leadership at that time just packed, when this great leader stood up and said to the government, we, as Indigenous people, First Nations people, can speak for ourselves and do things for ourselves. I was inspired by his speech because that's the first time I ever saw one of our people stand up to the government to tell them the whole truth about who we are. I was inspired by him. Later on, he told us that he established an office downtown Winnipeg. So one day I came to see the office. But what amazed me, what he did that particular time, was my own experience. As I got off the elevator, there he was standing to get on to go wait for the lunch. But what he did was most inspiring for me, because he reached out and said to me, my name is Dave Prashane, what is your name? I said, my name is Harry Wahbung, I'm from Kishkoin First Nation. He said, we need young people like yourselves to fight the government, what they're doing to us. If they continue doing what they do, we need young people to stand up amongst ourselves. But that leadership that you provide to us was so amazing. And that's why that Dave and I remember that special ceremony that was done at that particular time. A year after that, we were hired as community development workers by then the Manitoba Indian Brotherhood to make sure that we provide to inspire our people, to tell them that we can do things ourselves. The spirit is in all of us. We can't depend on government to do things for ourselves. So my experience at that particular time with Dave Prashane was immense, was very profound. He said to me that we young people need to provide them, and that's the same message that we provide Dave and I. Young people of today, it's your responsibility in your time to carry us on, to fight. But for us, at that particular time, I met Phil Fontaine that particular time as well. But in the later year, when the ceremony had happened in Balmoral Hotel, the chiefs were all gathered at that particular time. But some of the chiefs said, we must consider our own ceremonies, especially the pipe ceremony. You see, in 1969, when I was in Winnipeg, I was called home by our own chief. His name was Robin Blackbird. He was very traditional. He told me back home that during ceremonies are back home to fight the government about our ceremonies and our languages. So that's when he introduced those great words that I often hear all the time. Inakunigaven, the directions of the pipe, while the pipe is pointed in those 7 certain directions. So I learned from that time how important it is, because he told us at a particular time, this is our constitution, This is our nationhood. This is our identity. This is our law, pipe ceremony. So I think for me that, of all these years, I practiced that same principle about who we are as people. So that's why I honor pipe ceremonies. That's why I honor trilogies like this we have today and the songs that we sing, because those are the individual rights that we are given by the Creator. As we spoke, then Dave mentioned about, Louis Prince was the elder at that particular time. As he spoke, is what he talked about. Give me gagi gedo, give me gagi zmani gimana dominanen, jiminiski nemaning was when again, nominalsin. Imagine today, but Tamangaling image chicken gagi jiminiguizian. Or give me a nakudan yake, coming to Cadamon, we connect Miniskamish in Cadamon. Come on to Bagit Namoing, come on to Isian, come to Miniquang, the Benjamin and sir. She will get on to Magami Gishababian, Kagishiminiguizian, and Emission Muslim. As you go to Wahbanung, Pishiminiguizian, Hunting Mishagaki, doing a shinina, give me Nakudan. She go to Ningabion and Kagishiminiguing, and Mishkin Nakudan. She go to our save, and she got to us. Why Jesus, again, I get the mountains and again, I'm not seeing you. And you know, she go to Gamish Abishkina, canning again, okay, Michigan, you give me Nakudan Kinagabo. You got me not going to get to Akienzi. Since that particular time, the directions of the pipe has always been a profound effect for me, because it defines who we are as Indigenous people, the Anishinaabe people. For me, that experience was more than a set word. For the last 50 years, Dave and I had a humble beginnings. Working for our people in different categories. I was a chief from Island Reserve for many years as well. I was also in education. But for me, I think education is so important of our own people, but education falls in the white man's world. Because my grandmother, who was born in 1880, at the time of ceremony, simply said this to us: in other words, what she said, don't ever forget the language that we speak. One day if you forget the language, you'll forget the way we think, what the Creator has given to us. We'll have to use somebody else's language, somebody else's concepts, somebody else's values and belief system to explain who we are. That's not what the Creator has given to us. And what the Creator has given to us, has given us a journey for all of us. So this document that I present to you is a reflection of the times, because the document that you probably see in written form, when that was written 50 years ago, came from a certain angle, but kind of admitted that, didn't allow the original teaching for our times, because at that particular time, our elders were still very, very, adamant, to keep our teachings in the background. But today, things are different. Today is a time to share the wisdom of our people, the gifts of our people, the traditions of our people, especially that pipe ceremony. We're going to go again. You can share the same with me up in Watson, and the guy get win. No, not going again. You guys mean it was young. What the Creator has given to us is so important for all of us. So I come here today to witness as we present this document to you. Make sure that people become aware what happened in those days in our humble beginnings as people, because I think it's important for all of us to remember what our leaders stood up for that time, when the government said to us, you'll be no longer Anishinaabe people, no more Cree people, no more Dakota people, you'll be like us. And we stood up and said, no, the Creator has given to us, I treated time doing at the time of treaty. So I think for all of us, as we do our pipe ceremonies, it's our nationhood. It's our constitution. It's our law. That's what it is. On the government side, they also have those same principles where they define themselves as nations. For being a nation, like Canada and the United States, to have land, have to people, have language, have customs, have values, and form of government, and have to believe something greater. Well, we practiced that for thousands of years through our pipe ceremonies, and we still practice that today. So that's why we're still strong. The government or no other nation will ever destroy us, because we'll all be like that where we are. We never surrendered, we never gave up, we never give anything up from our time. So I think for all of us, as we come here to witness this great paper that we produced, that the elders have talked about, I want to thank a number of people, Sabine especially the one that written for us, the way it is. But before I go, I want to acknowledge a couple of people here that are present here. I want to acknowledge AJ Felix, who came from Saskatchewan to be with us, his wife Patsy here. But I also want to acknowledge Ernest The person that's sitting over there, he was a chief in 1970 when the white paper was released. And so I think there's only a few chiefs that are still alive who were in that particular time. But I assure you, our words that we speak, the language that we speak, and the teachings that we have is the answer to what we are to do.